everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Scenes. Once again, I'm Lucky Graham, your host, and I'm joined today by Benn, one half of Robbins Studios.
Hi.
And you might have seen Benn's work, does most of the photography that you guys see on my social media. And the link to all of his photography information will be down in our comment box, so go ahead and give that a like and see his work. And on today's episode, we're talking about the history of cosplay. We're old grumps. And
Get off my lawn!
We've been doing this for a while, and I realized in the past month or so, not many people know where cosplay came from.
I don't even know where cosplay came from, so
well,
it's
get
cool.
off this panel.
I'm sorry.
Get back here. Don't leave me alone. And we wanted to just give you guys a little heads up of where everything came from. The fact that the word cosplay wasn't
Cosplay. Is that wrong? Can I do that? I'm Asian, so it's okay, right?
I can't. Nope. It didn't really come into our vernacular until the internet.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it
because that's when the world opened up to everybody, and
I didn't know it was cosplay was the name for what we were doing until 2006.
Right, because everybody was just costuming. If you were just saying, "Oh, I'm going to dress up as as this character," or "I'm a costumer," you would never say, "I'm a cosplayer." Because, that wasn't until the Japanese decided to take two words, costume and play, and make one word into cosplay.
And I've talked about this a couple times on this station. I got into cosplay or costuming, as I knew it, with my mom and my dad, because my parents were super big nerds into Star Trek, and the frosty years of the Star Trek versus Star Wars fight in my house. And my mom's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so I got my start that, and it was just costume is a fun hobby to do when you go to literature events.
Oh.
And
wow, that's pretty cool.
I know. I'll be seeing my mom in a couple of weeks at a lit event as a tiny hobbit.
Nice.
How did you get into the whole cosplay community?
My big thing was obviously photography. I started going to cons when I was a kid, but they were the back issue flea market type cons where, it was just a bunch of dudes with boxes of comic books and bootleg VHSs. Hey! Oof. And I went...
no laser discs?
Laserdisc. I actually didn't get into Laserdisc till about 92, 93. So, that was a little bit later. But you would just go to these shows to buy back issues. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, they'd have local comic book artists and whatnot. And then my wife, who doesn't really do conventions, but, will do them and has some fun at them. One year, it was actually for our 5th wedding anniversary in 2003, where she was like, "I want to go to San Diego Comic-Con," and I was like, "Wait, who are you?"
Oh.
Yeah. So 2003 was my first San Diego, and that changed my world. I brought a film camera that I'll tell you how old I am, and shot about 14 rolls of film or so, and just was and just shot photos of everything. And we had this little brand new, it was all super new and exciting digital camera that we also shot photos on. But that was the first time I really saw cosplayers.
Yeah.
So that was 2003. But I'd been going to convention, and technically, if you really want to get back to it, the Star Trek, Star Wars thing, I'd seen people dressed up in Star Wars and Star Trek costumes at the Star Trek conventions and sci-fi conventions back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
But that was really the whole thing. So then I started taking more and more photographs, and it wasn't until about 2007 that I really started actually taking the photography of costumes seriously. And what it was just realizing that oh, this is really cool. It's I've got a dude here dressed like Boba Fett. I can actually have him pose and do a Boba Fett pose, and then make it look really cool and dynamic, and shoot it with a long lens and really dynamic angles. And then so the first few photos.
Is that how old those photos are?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 2007 was the first. So if you go back to, there's a shot actually of my friend Scott Kaufman before I even knew who he was as Boba Fett, just because I thought it was really cool. And I shot that photograph, and that was like one of the first like cosplay photos I ever took. So,
to give
10 years, guys.
Oof. Give everybody kind of a heads up that the first mention we have of fan costuming is honestly in the 1920s. Long time ago here in America, they would have like Orson Welles events and literature events, and people would dress up like Lord of the Rings,
right?
Or like they would dress
up,
or
like just Martians,
or like, and it's where a lot of modern steampunk gets their references
all of
from.
that Jules Verne stuff,
and it would like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and that's where conventions and this idea of costuming as a transformative fan art started. We didn't really have Halloween back then, and this was the only way for people to like dress up and show off their creativity outside of like actually working in an industry.
Neat.
And it kind of went on like that for years until we got the good old fun sci-fi conventions. And we talked a little bit about Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah.
I remember as a kiddo being the tiniest little Starfleet captain with my mom and my dad doing Star Trek Las Vegas.
Oh my god.
And this was like in the 80s.
Yeah.
And like I have photos of my mom in like some questionable Red Sonja-esque metal bikinis from the like 60s.
Nice. That's so good.
And back then, a lot of these costumes and the conventions were not child friendly. Like they were not.
Well, it was funny.
It was pasties and hope.
Just recently, somebody reposted an article that somebody had written about I think it was even San Diego Comic-Con back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And like half the women were naked.
Yeah,
like,
it was
just walking around, and they were like, "I'm Deja Thoris," and they were just boobs and like a tiny little metal thing.
And nobody said anything. They were like, "Right on."
Yeah, they were
Let's
like,
"Do this."
But also, it didn't permeate the mass culture. So like everybody wasn't going to that. It was like a small group of people.
It's back when Comic-Con was still in a basement.
Yeah,
and it was just rifling through old long boxes, like in the hope, and then you see a woman go by and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, naked girl, cool.
There were no competitions. No. Like, there were like look-alike contests, but that was really it.
The thing that blew me away was one of the photos was of a woman who had done a full Ripley from Alien costume in the space suit with the helmet, and she had I think she even had a face hugger, and like there wasn't the reference that we have nowadays. Like you can't find a high-res PDF or like a high-res JPEG or screen cap or whatever. This woman had to go through like a Starlog magazine from like black and white photographs and be like, okay, and then figure out what they would have made that out of to then create this thing. And it was gorgeous. It is, if you ever get a chance to find it on the internet, and it is insane what some of these people came up with almost zero like reference or material or even like resources. Like they didn't have Warbler back then. They didn't have all these like any of the heat sensitive like molding.
There wasn't even like mass available fabric stores,
right?
Like wigs that you had to go and get like a human hair wig, hundreds of dollars.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah.
And I love looking at those old photos because it was a lot of that like early days sci-fi and fantasy costuming was all about the original character.
Right.
It was a lot more creative freedom because their references didn't exist.
Right.
Like, nowadays, I feel so spoiled because I get these books that are the reference art books, and artists are like, oh, here's a 3-dimensional, full front, back, side, everything of this character you like.
Right.
And it didn't exist.
No, not at all. And that's what's so mind-blowing about it to me is that these people just took these like, oh, I cut this picture out of the newspaper that I saw an article on, Star Trek the Motion Picture, and
or I like the I blew out the VHS tape, keeping it on pause for so long.
Yeah, people who've worn out, there's like sections of their VHS that just kind of goes, and then it keeps going.
You're like, oh, you did that costume, didn't you?
Yeah, it's sick. It's amazing.
And those photos are just the start of what we all love and do today. It's from those pioneers.
Yeah.
Just pasties and hope.
That should be the title of this segment, Pasties and Hope.
Now, about 12 years ago, the internet happened.
Right.
And we were all introduced to the word cosplay.
Right.
Like, and that's when it first started.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what it was until, like, 2006. I was like, you mean costuming? Like...
Yeah.
And that's when I went to my first anime convention. Because anime conventions were not very well known.
No.
I went to a college down south where there was nothing. And I went to a small local anime convention and did my first cosplay. And I was like, well, okay, this is new. And then nowadays, it's the only word we have for this is cosplay.
Right, and I think that there's a funny line of demarcation where some of the older crowd still want to call it costuming, and they're like, I'm a costumer, I'm not a cosplayer. Cosplaying is for children or whatever. But
Get over it.
I know, exactly. But it's very interesting to see that sort of, delineation between
it's definitely
the two.
an age.
It's an age. It's definitely an age. And as the younger cosplayers are growing up, they're still cosplayers, and they still call it that because it's become such a vernacular for what this is nowadays. It's funny whenever I will make a post of a photograph, I'm actually aware, or try to be aware of who I'm posting photos of, to whether or not to call them a costumer or a cosplayer. Yeah. And to me it doesn't matter, but I know to them it does, so I always
personally
try to
I look at cosplay as I'm remaking this character.
Right.
Costuming, I feel like, is those that do their own character, or they do a historic.
The other thing I always think of costumers are the people who are trying to either do screen specific and or are utilizing actual screen used props and costumes. Those are costumers, the people, sort of like the difference between somebody who does a reenactment of, say, the Civil War.
Yes.
Versus somebody who wants to be Madoka.
Yeah. I look at a lot of the guys in the 501st and what they do and they go through, and those are I look at those as costumers. Right.
Exactly. But those guys are the guys that do the Colonial Marines or the Starship Troopers characters, those guys, and even anybody, a lot of the but even then, where does that line go? Blurs, because then you have people who are doing the screen accurate Wonder Womans and Batmans, and you've got Sean Reeves making these amazing cowls and all this stuff. It's just it's just easier. Just people are kind of it's just cosplay. Just call it cosplay. And let's be happy.
Would we still use the word cosplay and have the popularity now if it weren't for the boom in anime conventions?
No, I don't think so, honestly.
Because
that's huge. I mean...
Somewhere in 2006 to 2009, anime conventions just exploded. Yeah. And it wasn't just because we'd all had San Diego Comic-Con, we'd had Boston Comic-Con.
Otakon.
Yeah, but we'd never had the AAC up in New Hampshire, another anime convention, SegoyCon down in Kentucky, and A-Con in Texas, and the behemoth that Anime Expo is. Right.
But then you got SakuraCon, and now you've got Anime Matsuri, and you've got the
Holiday Matsuri.
Holiday Matsuri. I'm sorry. But all of those, it's just they just keep growing, and then of course Anime Boston. Which was the first anime convention I did, and that was 2003. Yeah, because they just celebrated their 15th year, which is crazy. Oof. Yeah.
Back when it was in the Armory.
It was actually before it was in the Armory. It was just only in the Park Plaza Hotel. Oh yeah. Because all of my pictures are these terribly lit photos, like 35mm photos, because I didn't bring a flash.
I love the fact that you those of us that have been doing this for so long play the game. What convention's this at based on the carpet?
Yeah. Yep.
You can tell.
It's so true. And then it went to the Armory, because they split the dealer's room to the Armory, and then the rest of the show was at the
play
hotel.
Frogger.
Yeah, and you had to go back and forth, and then it went to the Heinz, and it's been there since.
Yeah. So. Cosplay today.
Terrible. Don't do it. Ha! Kidding.
This is why we're never allowed ever together on camera. No, cosplay is so amazing today.
It's phenomenal.
We have so many avenues of being able to buy materials, get references. social media is available now. Like we can network with each other super quick.
And like sharing and like sharing process, sharing, prop making skills and like all that stuff. YouTube, like all the different tutorials on YouTube is like, it's insane. So it's just exponentially grown. And then with it, the conventions have grown. And now instead of having 12 conventions that you were excited about throughout the year that you would, save up for, there's like 12 every weekend. And it's like, it's getting to this point where you're like hitting critical mass, which is a little scary, but
it's amazing we're a little oversaturated.
Yeah, definitely,
right now.
I totally agree. I hit that point of like overwhelm now, just thinking about what shows.
About like halfway through last year, I kind of like went like, okay, let's divide everything up into like shows like that are like my bucket list shows. Shows I really want to go to see friends, and shows that are just in my area and convenient.
Right.
Got to the point where I'm old and crotchety. And I don't like crowds. I also don't like playing the badge and hotel Hunger Games.
No, that's upsetting too.
That's what's really gotten like the worst part about this is I love cosplaying. I hate cosplaying at conventions now because it's so overcrowded and you can't make it from point A to point B.
Right. Well, especially in those bigger shows where not only are they just bringing in more cosplayers, but they're also bringing in industry people and people who are not per se in the inner circle of like conventions, but they're just regular people who love Big Bang Theory or like Community or whatever TV, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're like, oh wait, there's a show and they give away free stuff and I can meet the actors. Yeah. Sure, I'll blow $3,000 to take my family there. And so then you get these shows that just are hitting, max capacity way faster than they ever used to. And now you've got to tap in your badges now. Like,
I actually like the badge tapping now.
I think
because like at New York Comic Con, everybody like through this huge hissy fit. We had to like register our badge.
Yeah, I remember.
And the RFID tag can just tap in and tap out. I have not waited in line once since doing the tap in tap out.
Yep.
There's no badge sharing, no overcrowding. It's been pretty much amazing. What I wanted to touch on is one thing that I'm slowly trying to get used to is before everything became so well known through modern media, it used to be just a couple of us basement dwellers, just like rifling through like there's like, do you have that new figure of Asuka? I have the new figure of Raid. I need to complete my set. It used to be like that, and now it's just a lot of people that don't really know a lot of the ins and outs and history, and why we're doing this show right now. And there's a lot of like weird, small social cues and social rules we all know in the cosplay community that I wish we had not have had to have had the cosplay as not consent movement.
Right, but it was necessary because people just like it's like they assume that because you're dressed in a scantily clad costume, you're like loose and promiscuous.
And I was like,
it's really weird. I hate that.
No.
You're like, no, I just like this character, and I'm not gonna...
I just want to wear a lasso of truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just some days.
Absolutely. No, and that's the downside to the cosplay becoming such a huge thing, is that more and more people are being exposed to it that had never been exposed to it before. And so, with more people who don't usually go to cons going to cons, on top of more cosplayers, both veteran and novice... going in and not sort of the novices not knowing the quote-unquote unspoken rules and the regular people just not knowing at all, like you get a lot of creepers and some people...
It's crossed a lot of lines because like for so long
people inappropriately
cosplay
grabbing
was like...
and touching, and especially like you get these people, you get a lot of costumers who are like we were just saying, who don't have the social skills that we wish that we had.
Yeah.
Like, I don't either, but like, you do your best. And, so they're doing these things and it's great because it gives them a chance to get out there and be like expressive and like be like, hey, I'm doing a thing where I feel comfortable in doing it. And it used to be conventions were the safe zone where you could dress up like Wonder Woman and you could dress up like Black Canary, or you could dress up like the Hulk or whatever and not be judged and not be inappropriately touched or not, it was a safe zone. So you could this is where you did this stuff. And then once it sort of opened up to the general public, then it's sort of you became once again become once again sort of like an island within your own community where you're like, this used to be the place where I could do this stuff, and now I feel like
I think that's why like we're moving to just cosplay centric conventions.
Yeah.
Because like we have Cosplay Photography Expo coming up. There's Costume Con.
Yeah, which sounds awesome.
Yeah, and there are certain conventions. Like I've had to basically look at all the events I go to throughout the year and be like, which ones can I wear certain costumes at?
Right.
Like I do Angela Witch Hunter. Mm-hmm. Like I can wear that anywhere. I'm fully clothed. When I do regular Angela with the metal bikini, no.
Right.
That's a Dragon Con.
Right, and that's the thing is I noticed that it's become a, is it a regular con or is it a Dragon Con?
Or is it a child con?
Or like a lot of conventions have become way more family centric.
Yes.
And so you have to tone down. Like I friends of mine who've gotten in trouble because they're wearing a costume that normally they would wear anywhere at any convention, and all of a sudden they're getting shunned and kicked out of shows or told to cover up, and I'm like, you guys are. This is our space. Get out of here, Yeah, but it's also their space too, so I get it. But like,
yeah, it's
Jesus.
I'm glad we're getting all these new people in. I'm glad we're getting a lot of new blood. I'm glad we're getting so many kids in, and this whole having to edit ourselves is the price we pay.
Right, and it's all, and it kind of always has been in everything where. It's free for all, and then all of a sudden, boom, everybody's doing it, and it's like, okay, well, if everybody's going to start doing it, people are going to take advantage of it, so now we have to rein it in a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm a pretty big proponent that anybody should cosplay. Everybody should try at least once. You have, I have, my husband has. I think everybody should. It's super fun. Just be smart about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love doing very scantily clad costumes.
Me too.
Calling your wife.
What? You've seen it.
I know. The internet remembers. But I've just had to edit myself, and I don't mind. Right. I just wait for Dragon Con or the adult centric conventions like New York Comic Con. Late at night, I will wear that metal bikini.
I'll wear it anytime.
At the kids con, I'm gonna be wearing Captain Marvel, fully clothed.
Yeah.
It's just all about. Oh my god. So speaking of the internet remembers.
Oh Jesus.
Do you know anime cosplay, American Cosplay Paradise?
Oh yeah, Jesus.
Just it's a big social network, like a Facebook kind of for all the cosplayers. You can upload all your stuff on there. Once upon a time, there was a documentation website called A Fan's View.
Oh my god, yeah.
And ACP has archived all of A Fan's View photos starting in 1999 to 2 years ago.
That's amazing.
So if you want to see the receipts on a bunch of us old people, they're on the website just to look around.
Nice.
I mean, that's back before sergers were available.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, it's shenanigans. Now, what do you think the future is going to be like?
Hopefully there'll be a lot more tubes and flying
of cosplay.
Well, especially with even more resources becoming available to the general public. I just for the first time went to Reynolds Advanced, whatever it's called, and
Reynolds Advanced Plastics.
That place. And it was amazing. It was like a playground for me and everybody else who already knew about it. But I went there because I had to get some materials for.
They have my credit card on file.
And I walked around there for about an hour before I even bought anything, and just stared at all this stuff and read every single box just to see what each thing did. But stuff like that, where that stuff was industrial at one point, and you couldn't get it without a license. Mm-hmm. And now they're like, sure, have some toxic silicone. We've made it non-toxic, sort of. Yeah, but it's amazing. And I had it smeared all over my head the other day.
Fare thee well.
Yeah. And so that stuff is amazing, and I think as more and more things become available to people, and as technology lets you create more and more detailed and easier to transport things, like things. So like if you have to make this giant thing that's made of metal, it's like, oh, just make it out of this other plastic material that
can fold down, and like go into an actual suitcase.
Right, exactly. So you can actually, with everything else, like the technology is going to advance to a point where, you know, it's just going to be made available. So like I think we'll see a even bigger influx of even more amazing costumes. And what's great is that with these newer processes, it'll be easier for novices and for the journeymen and all these people who
I see these kids that's like, oh, it's my second costume. I was
like,
I quit.
So that was my thing that blew my mind, was when I was taking photos at probably Boston and then again at I think it was Granite, and like there were people coming in and they were like, I'm 12 and I just made this giant armor thing and I sewed this amazing embroidery thing and I did this thing, and I'm like, wait, you're 12? And they're like, yeah, this is my second costume. And I'm like, what? And
I'm over here going like, ah!
Yeah.
It's taken me 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I feel the same. I do the same thing with photography, where like there are some of these amazing young photographers coming in, and they're doing this stuff, and I'm like, how did you? But I want to do that. How do you? Woo? You know. So it's just the technology is allowing us to advance and excel in what we're doing.
It's no longer as expensive.
No, that's the other thing.
Sewing machines have come down. Like, I remember the first sewing machine I bought as an adult was like, I was so excited because it was like a drop-in bobbin and it was almost $1,000. Jeez. Wow. And it was like, I was like, okay, well, here's all my college graduation award money.
Right.
And I just got a brand new embroidery plus sewing plus also self-serging machine for under like $200. And I was like,
yeah, it's insane.
I'm super excited, but I'm also just like super old and grumpy. Like,
well,
no.
It's like this golden age of nerddom in all aspects, and like, you know, we were the kids that got beat up in school, and now we're
I have a distinct memory in high school because we had just moved from living overseas on base, and when you're on base, there's no like real new fashion coming in. Like, your mom made your clothes, your everyday stuff. And I moved into a very financially well-to-do area, and I was like, yeah, my mom made my dress for this dance. And they're like, oh, are you poor? And I'm like, no, my mom's a really good seamstress, and she sewed me a dress. Yeah. And then in the back of my head for like the rest of my life, I was like, do I tell people I sew?
Right, yeah. Oh, are they going to think that I'm poor? Or are they think, you know,
like, is that a bad thing that
right. Which is crazy, because that's an insane skill to have. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I was 13.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's just, now it's like a badge of pride to be able to sew these things. And I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Liz designed her own wedding dress and co-sewed it with another seamstress. So it's...
I ordered mine off Amazon. Okay. Thank you so much, Ben, for coming out and talking about cosplay and the history and being an old grump with me. Now, guys, we have a lot more amazing things coming up. Go ahead and stay tuned, but let us know down in the comments what you'd like to see us talk about next, whether it's movies, news, new technology, and cosplay. We want to hear from you. And don't forget to go ahead, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.